Welcome to Books and Things with Tom. And I'm Tom. Today we have a guest he's got an extensive background in criminal justice. He's been a reformatory and training officer in jails and maximum security prisons. His criminal and juvenile justice plays significantly in his novel, Amanda's Room. Now, especially the reference to Baker Miller pink, which is a particular shade of pink that actually used in prisons and jails, which is very interesting, in cell blocks. He's taught extensively throughout the country on topics ranging from fire safety and riot control to management and development. So I don't do anything wrong because Chuck will know. Chuck was born as son of a coal miner in Pittston, Pennsylvania. Grew up as one of 11 children in the rough East New York, Brooklyn, a section of Brooklyn in New York. And he served as staff sergeant and rifle platoon leader in the Marine Corps. And now he lives with his wife and Judy in suburban Connecticut. Chuck Miceli is now an author. His book, Amanda's Room, is about a young lady who died but seems to remain in her room and has certain powers. I'll show you the trailer that goes along with this. Welcome, Chuck. You know, after looking at that trailer, and I've seen it a number of times, because ever since you showed me where your website was, I went on there and listened to that, and I watched it. I thought, is this a book that you read at night?
I sure hope so, yes.
Now, you got to tell me how this trailer is done. It's a superb job on the trailer.
Well, thank you. I'm thrilled. My son Michael and my daughter-in-law Jennifer own a video production company. And so when I needed to do, first of all, the cover for my book, I went to them and I said, I'd appreciate if you would work with me and help me to develop the cover. And I described the scene, the opening scene of the book.
Okay.
And then I described some of the atmosphere around it. And I said I wanted a Gothic look and feel. And so they did the cover, and the cover came out marvelously. Then, a little later on, when I started to really get involved in doing book talks and readings and signings, I wanted to have a greater presence, both on the web and at these events. And so I asked them about a book trailer. And so once again, they developed the book trailer, MiceliProductions.com. And they just do some marvelous, marvelous works. They normally do commercial work, but they did this for me.
That is amazing. Of course he did. No, I was just thrilled with it. I keep playing it because I got the loudspeakers from my computer. I'm trying nothing. Now, I remember reading something about you studied The Perfect Storm and Stephen King and a couple other things to.
Yeah, as I was writing the book. Well, first of all, the book started very, very differently. It started as a short story called The Room, which was more spiritual in nature than paranormal. Basically about this room that had a perfect environment, and asked the central question: if you had access to this perfect environment, and one of the principal characteristics of it is that you couldn't lie, what would you do if you had access to that kind of a room? And so things like, would you host political summits or international summits where people had to be honest with each other? Trouble was, as I explained the premise of the book to other people, they would say, oh, have you read The Shack? Because this wonderful national bestseller came out called The Shack, which was about...
Excellent book.
Yes, about a shack out in the woods with this whole spiritual aspect. And I said, if I go ahead and write this book the way I started, then people are going to say this is just a ripoff of The Shack. And so I decided to change the premise of the book. It needed a bigger conflict and it needed a bigger story. And there isn't much bigger than the weather. So I started playing with this aspect of, okay, if Amanda has the ability to control her environment, what's the extent of that power? Could she also affect the weather? Could she control the weather? Could she actually be the weather?
Wow.
And so that became a core premise for the book. And I started doing some research. And I read Stephen King's, some of his earlier works, Christine, because the car has these human-like qualities. And essentially, Amanda's room has a lot of human-like characteristics. Then Pet Cemetery.
Yeah.
Again, for the environmental aspect, just the overall feel of what's the area like around this room. And then I read The Perfect Storm, Sebastian Junger, because the book started to deal with the weather, and I was very impressed with his descriptions of going into this maelstrom and what it felt like to be heading into this overpowering weather phenomenon. And then I also read Pillars of the Earth by my favorite author, Ken Follett, for character development, because I think that's his masterpiece. When he did Pillars of the Earth, it set him apart from everything he had written before that. And so I wanted to capture some of that character development and actually have my readers fall in love with the characters in Amanda's room. So those were the 4 books that I used as the background. In fact, Pillars of the Earth plays a prominent role in the book in that one of the characters is reading it, and that becomes a major clue for things happening later on. And I just realized this morning, I'm working on the audiobook, and one of the main characters, the paragraph begins, his perfect storm began on Saturday. So there's some references to some of the reference books that I use.
Yeah, cool. That's neat. What made you sit down and start writing?
Well, actually, Amanda's Room is not my first book. My first book was a textbook. My background, as you mentioned at the intro, is heavily in criminal justice. And in the the late 1970s. Late 1970s, there was a rash of fires that spread throughout the country in prisons and jails. And I was doing consulting to a number of correctional agencies throughout New England at the time. And the organizations I was working for came to me and said, these fires are occurring everywhere, but nobody has a real good handle on why. Could you do some research and put together a pamphlet for administrators? Well, I teamed up with a fire marshal for the Summers prison, Enfield prison actually, in Connecticut. And together we spent a couple months researching the causes of these fires nationally and found essentially the root causes. And so we put together what was supposed to be a manual. It turned out to be 130 pages. And then the Department of Justice came back to me and asked if they could reprint it as a book. And so that was a book called Fire Behind Bars. And for a couple of years, I traveled around the country doing workshops and seminars on this concept of deadly fires in prisons and jails. And essentially, the book and the seminars that I did were credited in part with stopping that rash of fires, because we identified the root causes, and then prisons and jails started eliminating things like foam mattresses, thin plywood paneling on wood studs that were put on the concrete walls, styrene butadiene rubber used to coat padded cells. So when they started removing all of these things, the fires disappeared at the same time. So that gave me the bug for writing. And a number of times after that, in my 30 plus years of public service, I was given the opportunity to co-author books, but I never took advantage of it. So finally, it hit me that when I was getting closer to retirement, that I was going to change careers, and I was going to retire early to get back to writing.
Yeah.
And so I started. I've actually got 4 books in the works, and Amanda's Room was the first book to come out of the hopper.
That's great. I wish you luck with it.
Thank you.
I read a little on the on Amazon, first couple of pages, I guess, or whatever. It's a little cryptic, and it was very interesting. But I'm going to read it in the light.
I didn't write it to scare people. I hope it keeps people awake at night, but not because they're afraid to go to sleep. Rather, because the way I wrote it, when they reach the end of a chapter, it's like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? And they want to read the next chapter to find out what happens next. And by the time they get to the end of that one, I've hooked them again, and they can't go to sleep.
That's good.
And I've had people say they've basically read it in straight through in a night or two.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's neat. Now, I lost my train here. What are the main characters?
All right. The book, let's see if I can raise this here. Okay, yeah. This here is a mansion.
Okay.
A deserted mansion, an abandoned mansion, which is located on a college campus. Not College, fictitious college, but most of the book is actually based on fact. The restaurants, the locations are actual places. But the Nadawa College is located in the Hudson Valley in New York. And so the main characters for the book are 4 college students. And the chief protagonist, a girl named Katie Jarvis, is a meteorology student at this college, Nadawa College. And that the 2 main characters are Katie Jarvis and her college professor, Bert Myers. Okay. And then there are 3 other college students who play key roles in the story, and of course Amanda herself.
Which you never see.
Not only don't you see her, throughout the entire book, you never see Amanda, you never hear Amanda. She never speaks. In fact, you could make a case, did Amanda actually perform any of the acts that are attributed to her? And yet by the end of the book, I would say that you will know Amanda as well or better than any of the other characters.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great... It's not really a mystery, though, is it?
Well, actually, I wrote
Or is it a mystery?
Originally as a mystery. In fact, I used to call it a paranormal mystery.
Okay.
But the reviewers changed that because everyone started referring to it as a thriller. The first third of the book, I said I want you to fall in love with the characters. And so the first third of the book is really strong on character development. The middle third of the book really sets the stage for a mystery. And at the heart, it's a murder mystery. And then the question is, who or what is behind this? And then the last third, since the book deals with the weather, and with the fact that Amanda can only communicate by manipulating her environment and the weather, the more frustrated she becomes with her inability to communicate, the more intense and violent the weather becomes. So the last third of the book, the weather gets more and more violent, larger. So we go from things like a thunderstorm to a violent thunderstorm to a waterspout to a tornado to a Class 5 hurricane bearing in on Cape Cod. Yeah. And so people have referred to it as a thriller because essentially once I put you on that ride, it's a pretty interesting trip.
Read it in light. I think that's cool. My books are all nonfiction.
Yeah.
And I have ideas for fiction, but I just can't figure out what to do with them. Mm-hmm. And I admire people who can make stuff up because I can't write that. Mine's got to be facts. And
a number of people say that they don't read fiction. They'll only read nonfiction.
Yeah.
And I think at the heart, there's this sense of, I don't want to waste my time reading nonfiction when I could, fiction, when I could read nonfiction. And what I strive to do in my book, and I think what most fiction, or many, I would say many fiction authors do, what we strive to do is I'll tell people, nonfiction frequently gives you the what of life. Sometimes it gives you the how of life as well. Fiction, for a fiction writer who's really trying to work hard at the craft, is trying to give you the why of life and delve into kind of the great themes of life: love and hate, and revenge, and forgiveness and redemption. Yeah. And in Amanda's Room, I try and do that. I try to create characters that teach us something about living.
Huh. I like fiction. Especially mysteries and thrillers. And Patterson and right now I'm reading, oh God, I shouldn't have said that because I can't remember his name. Stuart Woods. And but they do hold your attention.
Yeah.
And that's the neat thing about it. Sounds like with Amanda's Room is that it's something that's going to hold your attention and keep you interested and make you wonder.
Yeah.
And that's what's neat.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned the shack before. It makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Could it be?
Yeah.
So I think now you're. I got to ask you about this cat.
the Kit Kat clock.
The Kit Kat clock.
Yes. Let me see. If I do this, all right, there you are. This clock, is he going to keep doing it? Yes. Okay. This clock was in my grandmother's kitchen in Pittston, Pennsylvania. And as a child, I would walk in and I would see these eyes moving and the tail wagging, and it just fascinated me. Now, in Amanda's room, in the book, the room itself has special supernatural powers. And I thought to myself, okay, how am I going to furnish this room? Well, there was the crib that Amanda was in, and then there's some sparse furnishings. And I said, okay, there's going to be a clock in the room. If there's going to be a clock in the room, what kind of clock would be in that kind of a room? Hands down, it had to be this one. And so I actually sent away to the California clock company that manufactures this to get the clock. Now, this clock is battery operated. And so the eyes will move and the tail will wag because the battery's operated.
Sure.
Well, the same clock is in Amanda's room, but it's the original. Those plug in the wall.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how things work. Except in Amanda's room, the eyes move, the tail wags, but the hands always stay at 10:07. They never move.
Oh.
Then, in Amanda's room, there's no electricity. So the eyes are moving and the tail is wagging, but there's no electricity. In fact, if you unplug the clock, the room goes dark.
Really?
And if you plug it back in again, the light returns. Except,
I'm going to be up late tonight.
Yeah.
I know.
except in Amanda's room, there are no light fixtures. And so the light comes from nowhere. The room has perfect temperature, year-round, day in, day out. Whether or not the windows are open or closed, whether or not the door is open or closed, whether or not it's 10 below or 110 outside, the room is always perfectly comfortable.
That's nice. We still have rooms like that. And now you had something else up here, a temperature.
Yes. Okay. So this is the Kit Kat clock that's inside of Amanda's room.
I think that's cute. I think I may have had one. Or my mother had one, I think, when I was a kid.
Now, this is another aspect of the book. This is called Galileo's thermoscope.
Okay.
Now, right now, you see that all of the balls are floating.
Yeah.
And this works on the density of liquids. The density of the liquids inside the globes actually changes at a different rate than the density in the larger tube. The hotter it gets, the more the globes will fall to the bottom. And what you do is you read there's a tag on each one. And so you read the temperature on the tag of the lowest floating ball to tell the temperature. Well, this one here goes up to maybe 80 degrees.
Okay.
In Amanda's room, it's a much taller thermoscope. It goes up to at least 96 degrees, and all of the balls are sitting at the bottom the first time you see it.
Oh.
And so it sets the stage, too, for what's going on with the environment around this room. And that becomes critically important exactly 1 year after you first see this.
Wow.
So that it's another one of the features in the book.
See, now, I have one of these. Now,
Yep.
now I'm going to have to keep looking at it. I just, I'm just thrilled. I think the premise of the book is just so interesting.
Well, I had a goal in mind. In most mysteries, the weather is the background.
Yeah.
You know, if everything is calm in the book, it's nice and sunny outside. If things start getting mysterious, it starts getting cloudy outside.
Yeah.
If somebody's going to get murdered, it gets rainy outside. So the weather kind of amplifies the story. In Amanda's room, the weather is the story.
Okay.
And so there's a lot to do
Does
with
she
that.
control anything else?
Well,
Or do we have to read the book to find out?
she or the room, and that really is one of the central questions. Once again, kind of referring, let's see if I can do this. If you see this little, there we go, this little bit of pink, there in the upper portion of the room, right here. There we go.
Oh, okay.
That little pink
Yeah.
glow coming out of the room.
Yeah.
All right. That is Amanda's room in this mansion. And Amanda's room has this perfect pink glow all the time. That actually is based on my criminal justice experience. At one time in the 70s, 80s, we actually were painting prison cells pink.
Really?
Yes. It's a particular shade of pink called Baker Miller pink. It's a real paint.
The
And-
guys must have loved it.
I'll tell you, the comments that were going through the prisons, you're going to paint a cell block pink, but this particular shade of pink has a psychological effect on people. You cannot be as aggressive in a room that is painted with Baker Miller pink. In fact, if you're a weightlifter, you can't lift as much weight in a room with Baker Miller pink. The paint has a psychological calming effect, and many schools still today use Baker Miller pink in things like timeout rooms, or if they're still using timeout rooms. Well, in Amanda's room, that particular shade of pink is tainted. I'm not going to tell you how or why, but it's tainted. And the tainting of that paint sets up the supernatural events that will occur in that room.
Okay.
And essentially creates a battleground between good and evil.
I do know color makes a difference. Blues, I think, is supposed to be soothing. Reds can be argumentative. And so now I know about pink. That's interesting. Now that's something else here we hadn't discussed. Where can we buy your book?
All right, the book is available in a number of places. First of all, mainly on Amazon.com. You can get both the paperback and the ebook for the Kindle on Amazon.com. You can get the paperback and the ebook for the Nook at BarnesandNoble.com. You can get it for the ebook for all other formats on Smashwords.com. Just this past few months, Pear Tree Publishing .net picked up the book, and they have it on their publishing site. And you can always get a autographed signed copy directly from me at my website, authorchuckmiceli.com.
And that's always the best. We're running out of time, and you have some events coming up, and you want to tell me about those? Yes.
Sure. Well, first of all, while I'm looking up the events, the most exciting thing is right now I am working with a gifted narrator, Russell Jonas, who's done acting in probably 40 different plays in New York City, and he teaches acting in Texas. He is right now narrating the audiobook for Amanda's Room, and I hope that's going to be out in several weeks. It's fantastic. I wrote the book for the movie, and listening to it gets you much closer to what that feel of the movie. In fact, most people who read the book, many of them, write reviews that say they can actually see the scenes in a movie as they're reading the book.
Really?
Let's see, what else have I got coming up? I am going to be with a bunch of other Connecticut authors at the Wadsworth Athenaeum.
Oh, yeah.
And I am looking, here we are, there we are. February 8th, book signing with other Connecticut authors from Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association at the Wadsworth Athenaeum in Hartford. On March 8th, I'm making a presentation on writing to students at Southington High School, which
That's
I'm looking
cool.
forward to. In April, I'm meeting with members of a Wolcott book club to discuss their reactions to Amanda's Room and answer questions about the book. And then I'm going to, I think, be a guest at your
February.
Kappa meeting.
February, going to be a guest speaker at the SE Kappa, and that's at the Groton Inn and Suites at 6:30, and it's the third Monday of the month.
And I'm really looking forward to that. I love talking to fellow authors.
Oh, it's such. I've got such a great crew. They're very good. They're friendly, and it's like a big family. Now you're working on your next novel.
Yes, Injured Angels.
Okay.
Actually, I'm writing that at the Bristol Senior Center, which is one of the principal locales for the book.
Okay.
And it's a kind of a late-in-life romance in which two dysfunctional women meet each other and help each other, not in spite of their disabilities, but because of them.
Huh.
It's a kind of a unique premise. It's based on Henry Nouwen's The Wounded Healer.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
That is cool. I just got to get started again. I keep threatening I'm going to write another book, and I just haven't done it yet. It's been a pleasure having you here tonight, and the time flies, unfortunately. And next week, I'm going to be interviewing Fred Neff, who has written, I think, 12 children's books. And February 6th, we are interviewing the owner of the Handlebar Cafe, and Betsy is sponsoring a benefit for Dorian Murray. And the information is on the screen right now. On February 9th, if you can picture this, there's motorcycle people are going to be putting on stilettos and Speedos and marching from the police station, from the Handlebar Cafe to the police station and back, trying to raise money for Dorian. We'd like to have people come and show up and show your appreciation by donating some more money for the young man. He's got cancer and he needs expenses. They got a lot of expenses. They're going to have T-shirts on sale for $20 each, and they're going to have a craft show at Handlebars, and I will be there myself. And there's also another craft show to be held on February 1st at the Wesley Senior Center in Wesley, Rhode Island. Thank you for watching. You should be reading. Cuddle up with a good book, especially on these cold nights, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was great.
Oh, it's a pleasure. That's fun.